You're back for more of the Nevers here on Buzz Chomp, and I'm reacting to episode 4. Whoa. I'm Dan Salem, and we got spy games. Major spy games. The Nevers is all about deception, magic, the unseen, so spy games seem natural. Yet the show is constantly showing us these big, bold statements that are secrets to everyone else. Well, now we have secrets that we don't know, and the spy games are real. We begin with Mary's funeral. Poor girl got gunned down by Gatling gun arm, who apparently worked for Malady, got let out of prison by who I think is Miss Bidlow, or Mason, or Mason is working with Miss Bidlow. A combination of evil to preserve the integrity of England against the Touched is unreal. We knew that England and the Touched were enemies, right? England kind of came out and said, we want to outlaw the Touched, we want to remove the Touched. This was a plague set upon the land. But it wasn't just England. Something, aliens, sprayed England and France and other places probably too. And then those people got activated, their powers became real. Mrs. True keeps speaking to this event like she was left behind, I think because she was trying to commit suicide, and then she was not allowed to, and she was saved, and she saw the future, and then we know that there's this giant energy orb underground that is also touched, and I believe it was calling and speaking directly to Mrs. True because she is the force bearer, the prophecy, if you will, of the Touched. And Mary's song, we learned, was lyrical in nature, and Myrtle was able to understand it, and when it got translated, was basically speaking directly to Mrs. True. This is not spy games directly, but it's also a little bit spy games on us. We don't know what the thing underground is. We don't know Mrs. True, really. We do know that she's just mass manipulating everybody, but for the greater good. That's truly what defines our good guys and bad guys in this show. It's for the greater good, because everyone's kind of out for themselves. That being said, Mrs. True is looking out for her people, the Touched, because they are being squashed upon, eradicated, mass murdered, death sentence, like I said last week. Mary was just the beginning. Because Mary was able to channel the language of the underground orb to speak to Mrs. True, that is why she was eliminated. Now, Mrs. True and Penance and her whole posse, now including Bonfire Annie and among others, were trying to figure out who killed Mary. Franks, who apparently was a famous boxer, is trying to figure out who killed Mary. Someone wants Frank to think Swan did it. Maybe it's Masson. Maybe it's Miss Bidlow. Maybe it's the combination of the two. Maybe it's the King of England. Probably going to be. Actually, was it Queen by now? Not quite sure. Regardless, it's the head of England. They are the ultimate Touched and the ultimate enemy because they don't like themselves. Calling it right now. In the quest to figure out Mary's murder, we are playing spy games because they're trying to eliminate suspects. So Penance goes and sees Augustus Bidlow, who can talk to birds, control birds, kind of become a bird. He's touched. He's a sweetheart. He's going to be a very big help because he's in the aristocracy. He's going to be a very big help to Penance and Mrs. True along the way. He's not the killer. Miss Bidlow might be. They're kind of honing in on her. They showed us her evil ways, how she was talking with the evil Dr. Haig, who creates those crazy robot creatures. That being said, they also focused in on Masson, because Masson has all the means and the motive. We know he's got his Touched daughter locked up in the dungeon in the basement, and apparently he had a mole, Lucy, at the orphanage with Mrs. True. But that mole wasn't for Mrs. True, was it? No. That mole was for Miss Bidlow. I don't think Masson trusted Mrs. Bidlow in her orphanage of Touched, so he had a mole there because of her. It happened to play out that it was also a mole for Miss True, so it worked to his advantage, but then Mrs. True caught Lucy, and Miller murdered Lucy because of necessity. Mole eliminated, spy games continue. Mrs. True then goes and blows up Masson's munitions for England, and there's a war going on. This is pre-World War I, so I'm not quite sure what war it is, who cares. And she gets back at him, so the games continue. Frank's trying to track down Mary's murderer because he still kind of loves Mary, and he's pointed towards Swan. He accosts Swan. It's a very funny scene. I love Swan's scenes because he's so proper, but then he's sexual. And he has all these love affairs with people, and you can see it. Every time he interacts with somebody, I had sex with you, and you know it. And Frank's just off the rails, but he's a good guy at heart. I don't think he'll survive in the long run, but he's going to help. Bonfire Annie just likes to light things on fire. She's helping because she wants to preserve the Touched. She doesn't like that they're being hunted. Can't trust her, though, because she's just selfish out for herself. Malady got caught by Frank, and she's going to help. But again, she's also just out for herself. She's speaking to God, but I don't actually think it's the God that she thinks. I think it's the entity in the ground that was also singing to Mrs. True. Because Mrs. True and Malady have a connection in the past. We don't know what. This energy orb connects all the touched. This energy orb might actually be a creature. And perhaps there were aliens flying that spaceship that sprayed the people. With only 2 episodes left in part 1 of season 1, I'm not sure how many more answers we're going to get. We're probably going to get a major cliffhanger. I don't know when part 2 of season 1 will come back. I really hope this show continues. Full part 2, full season 2. Because it's really, really interesting. And the layers of the onion are just peeling away. And it's quirky and funny. And there's always a cool fight scene. Mrs. True fought Lucy, the spy, in this episode. It was a really cool fight scene because you get to see Mrs. True, who is a super badass somehow. I don't know how she got trained. Fight these people with abilities who are like superheroes but don't know how to use them. As our spy games roll on, Miss Bidlow appears bad, but also kind of good. Masson appears bad, but he might actually be sort of good because he hasn't touched the daughter in the basement that's locked in a dungeon. Swan is totally waffling in the middle. This is just a gray show all along. I mean, Mrs. True keeps killing people for good. It's really amusing. Biggest open question. Who or what is speaking to Mrs. True? Who or what is speaking to Malady? How are they connected? Dr. Horatio is connected. The beggar king's now pulled in because he's employing the touch for protection. Now he's going to work for Masson, but he's also working for Mrs. True. He's also working for Miss Bidlow. Everyone, I said this is like a circle jerk. Everyone's working for each other, fighting each other, trying to help each other, but also hurt each other. Nobody wins when you're all in a circle, doing the thing to each other. I'm Dan Salem. Subscribe to BuzzChomp for more of The Nevers and other great TV, sci-fi all year long. And comment below, who do you think is the real enemy in The Nevers? Who's the ultimate power that has created the Touched? And will we get any answers before part 1 of season 1 concludes?